Hi, everybody. I'm James, and welcome back to Storytime with James. Make sure you like, subscribe, and leave me a comment if you like. All right. This one is called The Blizzard of 79. Yes. Yes. Oh my goodness, man. It was a blizzard that happened in 1979, and it was 20 inches of snow. Okay, like a total of maybe 10 feet of snow. Uh, uh, it happened in 1979. Okay, look, the CTA, the Chicago Transit Authority, kept running. It kept running, so it never stopped. They were excellent. They were excellent because no one could drive at that time. Driving was non-existent. Okay, but this was the worst blizzard I had ever experienced. I know it was one in 2011 or something like that, but I wasn't in Chicago then. But the 79 was the worst that I've ever experienced. Okay, look, we had to walk in the middle of the street. You didn't worry about cars coming because they were non-existent. They were all parked on the sides of the street, and you couldn't see the cars hardly because they were covered up with snow. So you got to look at how tall a car is to you. That's how high the snow was. It was crazy. Look, roofs were caving in, okay, because of the buildup of snow on the roofs, you know. So you have to be careful, even in your own home, your own house. You had to be careful. Well, we was fortunate to be in the apartment, okay, at the time, on the first floor. So it was we wasn't worried about the roof caving in, but you know, man, it was crazy. It was a bad time though. It was a bad time. But we had radiator heat. You know the radiators that it was steam would build up inside of them. Sometimes you have to take the valve off the end and let some of that water out of there or something like that. But those things would heat the house perfectly. They was run by a boiler in the basement. So it was cool. It was cool. And it was steam the windows up, all the windows up in the house though. But that was a good heating system. We were cozy. We were cozy and stuff like that. Man, we had a lot of fun though. Well, I was a shawty then. I was like a shawty. We were all young. But it didn't impact us like it did my parents, okay? Because my parents were uh were mad because they couldn't go to work and stuff like that. I was fortunate to be too young to go to work. So it was all fun to me. We would go outside and we would make snowmen and make snow angels and flip in the snow and everything, throw snowballs and stuff like that. It was a fun time for us. But it got kind of bad because it was hard finding goods, okay? Trying to get to a store because you couldn't drive your car. You couldn't drive your car to the market we used to go to. I think it was called AMP. AMP. You know, we couldn't go to the AMP, so we had to go to the corner store, if it was open. So I don't know, man. It was crazy, you know. Man, yeah, my father and my mother, they couldn't get out to make money the way they wanted to. But fortunate enough that they didn't cut the lights. The lights didn't get cut off or nothing like that. So it was okay. But I heard that a lot of folks were unalived, unaliving each other. It was crazy. It was It was called cabin fever. All right, cabin fever, where people, I guess, they get tired of seeing somebody in their house and stuff like that, so they unalive them. I don't know, but that's crazy. They would snap. They would snap off and unalive somebody. You know, each other. You know, man, it was crazy, man. It would be freezing outside, freezing. I'm talking about. It was like during the blizzard of '79. I think it was every bit of 15 below. 15 below zero, 10 below zero. Stuff like that. But we we didn't feel it. But we'd come in the house and our fingers would be so frozen and our toes would be frozen, and we would try to put them near the radiator, but and then they start throbbing like boom, boom, boom. Your fingers and toes. It was crazy. But I used to love the feeling of taking your shoes off and you have your socks on and you put your feet up under that radiator and the warmth that comes off of that. Oh my goodness. It was a cozy feeling. It was cozy feeling. You know what? This was the sixth time in O'Hare Airport's existence that they shut down. They shut down during the blizzard of '79. That was the sixth time it ever, in its history of being open, ever shut down. So this blizzard was no joke. It was no joke. It was countless animals had perished, during the blizzard of '79. Countless animals perished. People had dogs outside and stuff like that. And there were stray dogs outside that perished. And even our cat, our cat name was Tony. And Tony he was like a family member to us. But he succumbed to it too. He got trapped in the basement. Down in the basement, he found a way like into I think a window was broke down there. He found the way in there, and then the snow covered up covered it up, and it was no way for him to get out. So he perished down there. That was crazy. It was a sad day. When Tony died. That was our cat. We loved that cat too. But man, it was a trying time. But we made it through. We made it through. Just like I'm sure y'all made it through a lot of disasters, a lot of natural disasters that happen around. But that blizzard of '79 was terrible, and I don't understand how the lights never went out. I know here when there's a blizzard and it's freezing outside, the lines would fall down. But in Chicago, they didn't go. They didn't go down. They didn't go down. I think I don't know if they had the lines underground or what. But they didn't freeze and crack and everything like that. Then there was people downtown, like homeless people that they had migrated downtown, to live because they slept on the gratings downtown. Those little grating things, they would lay on those and put cover over themselves because the heat would come up from the gratings. I don't know. That's a hard way to live, but they survived. They survived. The homeless people, but the homeless dogs and stuff, they perished. Yeah, man, it was crazy. But that was the blizzard of '79. And it was a blizzard in '68. I think it was '68 that was worse than '67 or '68. That was worse than the blizzard of '79. And I think it was worse because of the way they were living back in '67 and '68. But I don't know. All right. Anyway, make sure you like, subscribe, and leave me a comment if you like. And hit that bell notification. Hit that bell notification so that you know every time I drop another video. And share, share, share. Share my videos with your friends. Share them with your family. Share them with your loved ones. And even share them with your enemies. Peace. Adios. Salamat.
Salamat!